Good evening and a warm welcome to members, officers and members of the public watching from home. This is the first Housing Committee under the new governance system, and as such this agenda does not appear to be a very heavy one due to the transition phase from Cabinet to committee structure. I expect the future committees will have a more full agenda with officers bringing reports and allowing for member debate. Can I please remind all members and attendees to turn off their cameras and microphones until asked to speak. The meeting will be webcast and a record retained on the council website for those viewing at home. For those viewing the webcast at home, I would like to inform you that if you look above the video, you'll see a resources tab. If you select that and click the link, the agenda will appear on the right hand side, and this will allow you to open the agenda in a PDF format and be able to follow discussion and debate. Okay, I don't believe I have any apologies unless I'm told otherwise.
No, Chair, we're not aware of any apologies tonight. Would you like me to just do a roll call to check that the members of the committee are all here?
That would be really useful. Thank you, Vicky.
Okay. Cllr Bird?
Yes, good evening.
Cllr Brame?
Yes, good evening. I'm present, thank you.
Cllr Steve Hayes? Cllr Hayes? I'll come back to Cllr Hayes. Cllr Adrian Jones? Cllr Jones? No. Cllr Kelly? No Cllr Kelly. Cllr Lewis?
Councillor Lewis, present and correct. Vicky?
Thank you. Councillor McManus clearly is here because she's introduced herself in the meeting. Councillor Robinson?
Good evening, yeah, Councillor Robinson here.
Councillor Sullivan? Councillor Walsh? Councillor Walsh? Councillor Whittingham?
Present.
Okay, now just go back and see if the members who weren't responding previously have arrived. Councillor Hayes?
Sorry, Vicky, it's Paul Hayes. You said Steve Hayes earlier. I'm not sure whether Steve Hayes should also be here.
Sorry, I think maybe that's a mistake on my list of committee members. Thank you, Councillor Hayes.
Adrian Jones is here now.
Councillor Jones, thank you. Councillor Kelly?
Vicky, I don't think Stuart Kelly is a member of this committee.
Right, okay. Sorry, he's been put on my list.
And Councillor George Davies, I'm here.
Councillor Davies. I do apologise, members. My list doesn't appear to be correct.
Okay,
Apologies,
I actually
Vicky, that's
think
my fault.
Is there anybody else that I haven't called their names out who's present this evening?
Yes, Councillor Johnson, I'm in this committee and I'm here, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I think that's everybody present and Councillor McManus.
Okay, thank you for that, Vicky. Moving on to item number 3, Members' Code of Conduct and Declarations of Interest. Members are asked to consider whether they have any disclosable pecuniary interests and or any other relevant interest in connection with any items on this agenda, and if so, to declare them and state the nature of that interest. Do we have any declarations? No, I'll take that as a no then. Thank you, Vicky.
Okay, thank you, Councillor.
And moving on to item number 4, public and member questions. I believe we have 3 questions that have been received by members of the public. And I think the first one is a resident called Vicky Harris. Is Vicky waiting to come in, please, Bryn?
She's not in the lobby currently. I'm trying to contact her. We do have Tim Baker, who I
Okay.
think is for one of the other questions. So we could maybe start with him, and I'll try and
That's
get
right.
Vicky in.
Yep, that would be good. Thank you. Hello, is Tim there?
Yep, sorry. Somebody-
Okay, no, that's
hi.
okay.
Okay.
Don't
So-
apologise, Tim. It's difficult when you're doing virtual meetings, isn't it? Because you can't actually see whether
Absolutely.
somebody's in the room. What I should say to you, Tim, is that if I can just remind yourself and the other members, if they are managing to listen in now, that once questions have been asked and you've received your answer, I'd ask that you leave the meeting. I understand also that you've been sent the relevant details to watch the remainder of the meeting
That's right,
online.
yeah.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, Tim. So over to you then, please, Tim.
Yeah, so the local authority in Cardiff supported the local residents affected by the leasehold issue, and we're preparing to take Persimmon to court. Could Wirral Council support such action if it was to lead to this?
Okay. Well, first of all, thanks for your question. The action in Cardiff was taken by the local authority's Trade and Standards Service in 2014. Wirral Council took a decision to stop operating a consumer advice service as part of the Trade and Standards. And as such, since that date, Wirral Trade and Standards only investigate criminal matters. Advice in relation to consumer issues is now provided by the National Citizens Advice Consumer Helpline. Wirral Trade and Standards are aware that there's an ongoing investigation by the Competition and Markets Authority and have advised residents who may wish to contact that agency directly regarding their individual cases. Now, to do that via email, and we'll make sure that this is available afterwards. But there is a direct email which is leasehold@CMUK, but of course that will be available for you, Tim.
Okay.
And I'm also aware that the CMA has produced and written a video guidance which offers advice on a number of issues, including what people can do when faced with fees and charges that they consider unjustified. Okay. Thank you, Tim. Thanks very much. Are other members of the public in yet, Bryn?
They are not showing in the list at the moment. I've just emailed them both with the link again. I'm hoping that they'll join us shortly.
Okay.
Chair. Excuse
Yes,
me.
sorry. Thank you, Ian.
Chair, sorry, Councillor Ian Lewis. Can I raise a point on the remarks made by Mr. Baker, please?
Yes, yes, go ahead.
Obviously aware of what's happening with Persimmon. I think it was in Brombre that Councillor Bird produced a petition at the last council meeting, and I'm presuming that Mr. Baker is referring to the same matter in Brombre. I just wonder whether it would be useful when we're looking at the work programme later, we could look at this issue in more detail, notwithstanding the point about legal action being taken and Wirral's trading standards, but I think it would be useful to know what the issues are and whether the council can provide some moral support, even if we can't do anything else at this stage.
Okay, well, perhaps we can pick that up later then, Ian. And it might be that we may be able to answer some of those questions if we have the other two members of the public here. I wonder, and I don't know, so I'm putting this out there. Tim, do you know whether or not, do you know the questions that the other two members of the public were wanting to put forward?
Chair, can I suggest that maybe if the other members of the public are not present, you read out the questions?
Yep, that's fine.
give
Okay,
chance to
thank
them.
you. So I'm going to read out the questions and then answer myself, but yeah, there you go. Okay, so the first one that we had was from Vicky Harris. And Vicky asks, would it be reasonable to support a clause in the planning application that matters of leasehold with the current resident should be resolved before the proposed estate is built? I'm afraid that that this is not a relevant matter that the local authority, as a planning authority, can legally take into account when determining planning applications, I'm afraid. The second question was from Jess Pearce, And Jess asks, the Competition and Markets Authority are investigating mis-selling applications against Persimmon Homes for the way they have sold properties on not only our estate, Merseyview, but scores up and down the country. The government has said it is committed to bring forward leasehold legislation as soon as time allows. What would the council's thoughts be on this matter, and how would they see fit to support and advocate to their residents? Now, I think that's probably something similar to what you were asking, Councillor Lewis. So certainly the council notes that there is an ongoing investigation by the Competition and Markets Authority, and we do understand that government will be looking at legislation to address the issues going forward. There is existing legislation, the Lease Home Reform Act 1967, which allows tenants to buy out their freehold subject to certain terms and payment. However, the Act does have some limitations and may not be helpful to all long leaseholders. I can see that Jan Pierce is there in the lobby, Bryn. And I think it would be remiss of me just to continue with the answer when she's not had the chance to ask the question herself.
That's fine.
So
Vicky
should we
Harris has also
backtrack?
just joined as well, so shall I let her do?
Okay. Well, shall we start again then? Because I don't want either to miss answering their questions when they put them in. So Tim, we've already had, but if we can backtrack and start with Vicky, if Vicky's there now, please.
Hi, sorry.
That's okay, Vicky, don't apologise. I was just busy reading out questions and then answering myself, but please go ahead.
Okay, so we're currently in a state of 169 houses, 89 of which are leasehold. We've been missold our properties in the belief that the entire estate would be sold leasehold. We now find ourselves living in a two-tier estate through no fault of our own. As in 2017, the remaining 80 houses built on the estate were then sold freehold.
Chair, sorry to interrupt at this stage, but this is not the question that was submitted.
No,
I'm just sorry. I'm just giving you a quick background as to why I'm asking this question. I've got like 2 sentences left to say. Is that okay?
Well, yes, if the chair is happy to allow that, but really the question should be read as it has been served and within the time period.
Okay, I'm happy to allow that to continue, Vicky.
Okay,
please continue.
The new proposed plan of 120 houses for phase 2 will be sold freehold, thus making it near impossible for us to sell our properties, as the market will be saturated with freehold properties that look exactly the same as ours. My question is, would it be reasonable to support a clause in the planning application that matters of leasehold with the current residents should be resolved before the proposed estate is built?
Okay, thank you, Vicky. Well, I'm afraid, and some people will have heard this answer already, but I'm afraid that this isn't a relevant matter that the local authority, as a planning authority, can legally take into account when determining planning applications. Okay, I believe we have Jan Piers with us, and if Jan is there, if Jan could come forward and ask a question, please.
Yes, can everyone hear me?
Hi, Jan. Yes, thank you.
So the Competition and Markets Authority are investigating the mis-selling allegations against Persimmon Homes for the way in which that they've sold the properties on not only just our estate, Merseyview, but also others up and down the country. The government have said that they are committed to bringing forward the leasehold legislation as soon as the time allows. What would the council's thoughts be on this matter, and how would they see fit to support and advocate for their residents?
Well, firstly, Jess, thanks for your question. The council notes that there is that ongoing investigation by the Competition and Markets Authority, and we understand that the government will be looking at legislation to address the issues going forward. There is existing legislation, the Leasehold Reform Act 1967, which allows tenants to buy out their freeholds subject to certain terms and payment. However, the Act does have some limitations and may not be helpful to all long-term leaseholders. As and when proposals for new legislation are brought forward by the government, the council will consider its response to those proposals and any other proposals which may be made by the Competition and Markets Authority. What I would say is that I will write to the member, to the minister, applying pressure to put forward steps and ask for at least a timetable to set out for action. I'm clear that this should be resolved as soon as possible. I'm aware of the disparity which many current leaseholders face and the problems and lack of regulation regarding this unacceptable charges and fees associated with this practice, which clearly needs to stop. So now, Vicky, I don't know if I can just ask a question now of our legal team. Is there anything that you would like to add to that, Vicky?
No, Councillor McManus, nothing further at the present time.
Okay, and can I just clarify, are we allowed, after this, are we allowed to take questions from members?
Under the Constitution, questions by members of the public are supposed to be put without discussion,
Okay.
and an answer given by the chair, and then the matter, we're supposed to move on in the agenda to the next item.
Okay, all right, thank you, Vicky. I think that clears up that matter then. So if I can just allow a couple of moments for our public, our residents to leave the meeting, and as mentioned before, that you can still view online the rest of the meeting if you wanted to do that. Thank you.
Councillor, sorry, Chair.
Sorry,
Sorry,
Ian, you've got your hand up, yes.
Yes, sorry, Councillor Lewis again. Could I say that certainly on behalf of my group, I'd be happy that we sign that letter with you to make it an all-party letter, hopefully.
That's really good. Thank you, Ian. Yes, thank you.
I'd also like
Sorry, Councillor Bird, I can't hear you.
a welcome
Councillor Bird, you're breaking up, I'm afraid. I don't know if it's only for me or if everyone's having the same problem.
McManus.
My internet is telling me I have very bad quality.
Okay.
So I'll just carry on if I may.
Could you perhaps put it in the chat box, Joe?
I can't hear, sorry.
No, I can't hear you at all.
Developers to try and
pop it in the chat box, that'd be really helpful. But I'll try and come back to you before we do that. Councillor Brame, you've got your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just to say that I would be happy to support an all-party approach on that letter signing as well.
Perfect, thank you. Joe, I'll come back to you and see if we can hear you.
Yeah, I welcome the cross-party support on this issue. I would urge that we lay out an expectation that we do expect developers to resolve these issues before further development takes place. The risk is that the legislation will take too long before as residents genuine legitimate consent.
Sorry, you've broken up again, but I think I got the gist of what you're saying, and I quite agree, and that's why I think it's important that we put a letter forward, and I'm really pleased that that's going to be cross-party. Thank you for that, everybody. Moving on to item number 4B. Do we have any statements and petitions? I'm not aware of any.
We've not been notified of any, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Vicky. Joe, did you have your hand up, or is it
from previously?
Okay, that's fine, thank you. Moving on to 4C, any questions by members?
No,
I'm not aware of any.
No, we've not had any notification of any, Chair.
Thank you, Vicky. Moving on to Section A, Budget and Performance Management. And do we have Cher here yet?
Chair, I will pick up this one if that's okay, as the lead director for the committee.
Oh, brilliant. Okay, that's better still, Alan. Thank you. Over to you.
Thanks, Chair, and good evening, members of the committee. This report will update members of the committee on the council's current budget position and does outline the process for setting the balanced budget in this transition year. So members of the committee are asked to note the budget position, the current projected deficit and how that deficit is made up, which is all outlined within the report. It also sets out how COVID-19 has impacted and what monies have currently been received to mitigate that impact. 3.6 sets out current mitigations against a deficit being undertaken. Specifically, it references how the council is working with MHCLG to see how the council could undertake a capitalisation directive, so effectively borrow in this financial year, potentially next year, to offset some of the budget pressure that we are currently experiencing, but we need to negotiate that with Treasury. In order to undertake that capitalisation directive, there's a number of things we need to do. We need to prove how the budget mitigations are being managed in other parts of the organisation. So the report sets out the 5 steps which are being currently undertaking to address that budget gap. I'll just bring your attention to a few of those. One is the immediate action to review the current savings proposals in year. There has been an impact because of COVID, with staff being redeployed into other parts of the organisation, which means that some of the projected savings haven't been able to be achieved. Also, I'd like to point out the part of the report which talks about the director's proposals. We've got a workshop this evening, which I will just update with some more information from members of the committee, our current financial position, and update on some proposals which have been made by directors. We do want to encourage members of the committee to come forward with their own budget savings. This is an unprecedented approach to the budget in terms of just this transition year, and we will be looking to go back to business as usual next year, where we will be doing this a lot earlier and trying to get proposals in the committee discussions as soon as possible. And then the 5th one is contingency. If we do are unable to actually balance the budget in terms of the deficit, then we will be looking at some projected impacts on the budget of looking at taking out 5, 10 and 15% as well. Lastly, I'd just like to point out that in the workshop later on, I will talk about some of the proposals which we are bringing forward as directors. That will be the first of the timeline of activities between now and budget setting in February. So we'll come back to committee in November, and then committee will make its recommendations to Policy and Resources Committee in December, and then we'll undertake a public consultation of any proposals which we set out. We will then know by December, January, what the local government settlement will be, the outcome of the capitalisation directive from MHCLG, and we'll be able to then take forward proposals from Policy and Resources to full council in February. So I'll stop there, Chair, if that's okay, and then see if there's any questions from members of the committee.
Okay, thank you, Allan. Do I have any questions, please, councillors? Surprisingly quiet. Just looking on the chat, actually don't see anything there. So if I haven't got any questions, I'm going to move on to item number 6. Are you taking this one again, please, Allan?
Chair, sorry, can I just confirm that the recommendation which you've moved is seconded by members and that everybody agrees to the recommendation by assent?
Okay. Everybody in agreed by assent?
Is that seconded?
So I'm happy to second that.
Thank you, Councillor Brame. And we'll record that as agreed by assent.
Okay, thank you for that, Vicky. Okay then, moving on to item number 6. Is this you again, Allan, or do we have shares? Okay, great, thank you. Over to you.
Thanks, Chair. This is a report just to outline to members of the committee how we'll be moving forward in terms of budget and performance monitoring. So this is a report about how we will want to work with committee to develop a performance framework that fits within the work programme for the committee then to be able to assure themselves of the work that's been undertaken in this area of the council. I anticipate the framework for reporting will be along the lines of what we did during the pandemic and the COVID-19 dashboard, which was well received by members, group leaders and other stakeholders from outside of the organisation as well. And just to set out, I do want to work together to shape this piece of work. We do want to get the performance monitoring right against both the budget and also the work undertaken by the council in this area. So the recommendation is basically that members note the proposals outlined in this, and then we will continue to work together on the framework throughout November to be brought back then to a future committee. One last bit I would like to add, Chair, if that's okay. Just, it's not in the report, but from a framework point of view, I would like to capture information, so particularly because of the current situation, COVID-19, about what impact that is having on areas of this committee's work programme, as well as links into the Economic Regeneration Committee, because I think that would be important for members just to understand that context as well. So I'll be discussing that with members as we move forward.
Lovely. Thank you, Alan. Do I have any member questions? No, gosh, we are quiet tonight. We're not normally, are we? But thank you for that. Just one last look. No questions? Okay. Alan, can I ask you to please schedule a members' workshop to enable members to identify, shape and own that performance data that you talked about and to be presented in future reports?
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay.
Chair, so you've moved that recommendation. Can I just confirm that it's seconded and that members are all happy to deal with the matter by assent?
So I'll second that one too, Chair.
Thank you. Thanks, Alan.
We'll record
Okay.
that then as dealt with by assent.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Vicky. Now, we're moving on to section B, which is the work programme. I don't know, we're only 25 minutes in, so I don't know if you want to have a short breather or whether you want to continue. I'm quite happy to continue, but that's only me. I don't know how everybody else feels. Not
Yeah,
hearing anything, so crack
Continue,
on. Thank
Chair.
you. Lovely.
Continue.
Thank you. Okay, Bryn, I'm going to invite you now forward, please, as the Senior Democratic Service Officer to present your report, please.
Yeah, can I just ask, is this part of the meeting still being recorded?
Yes, it is, Councillor.
Okay, thank you.
Right, so you should all have that as part of the agenda package. There is not a huge amount on it right now.
There will
as
be.
you've noticed. Yes, yes, there definitely will. What I would note is in the upcoming activities in this report, there are two reports that should be listed and are not, and for which I obviously apologise. But there are two reports on the forward plan as key decisions. One is called the Housing Growth Strategy, delivering for Wirral, and the other is Central Government Housing Infrastructure Funding. First one has a timeline of between November and January, and the second one has a timeline of between November and December. Other than that, it's what you've got in front of you.
Okay, thank you. I'm just looking to see if there's any questions. Yeah, Alan, can I take you first? I've then got Councillor Bird and then Councillor Ian Lewis.
It's not so much a question, Chair, but one thing that I would be very keen for the committee to look at as probably a part of a longer term strategy is the possibility of reopening the council house building on Wirral. I think in the immediate future that's not going to happen with our current financial situation, but I think it's an important area that we ought to be exploring and looking at building a housing revenue account perhaps in the coming years.
Okay, thank you, Alan. I would just say that that's definitely something that's on our list to have a look at, and we do need to explore it and see where that takes us. Did you want to make any comments to that? I can see we've got Lisa Newman here and we've got Alan. Did any of the officers want to make comment back on that?
Chair, if I may, so no, I'm happy to pick that up in the work programme.
Okay, great.
And be able to bring back just some of the work that's been done to date in terms of looking at a housing revenue account and direct building on behalf of the authority as well. But we'll pick this up. So I'm going to present to members of the committee around the draft housing strategy following this meeting, so we can pick up and bring it back.
Perfect. Thank you. Councillor Jo Bird.
Thanks, Chair. I'd also like to support that call to really have a good detailed look at the possibilities, the options for building and
I'm sorry, Jo, you've frozen again.
We do, because
I wonder if it might work better if Jo was to switch her picture off. That might possibly assist.
I was
Yep, try. Jo,
put it in the chat as
yeah,
also.
yeah, great. If you can pop it in the chat, I heard that bit then. That would be really helpful.
Or look at
Yeah,
the options for council housing.
Yeah, and that's what we've just. I don't know if you heard the conversation between Councillor Brame and myself, but yes, that's certainly what we intend to do. Ian,
Yeah.
Councillor Lewis.
I haven't finished. Sorry.
So, well, I can't hear you, Jo. You're breaking up. Can I ask you to perhaps pop? Yeah, thank you. You literally coming back and forth. We can't hear you. Councillor Lewis, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, a couple of points just on the work programme, maybe one for Bryn or maybe for Allan to answer. Firstly, can I say we, the Conservative Group, fully agree with the need to review whether we can reopen the housing revenue account and how quickly we can do that. So I would urge the Director to maybe come up with a paper sooner rather than later on this. We've been talking about this for a while now, and as we know, the housing waiting list in the borough isn't getting any shorter for whatever reason. Secondly, I think I'd also be interested to know when we have a standing item on the work programme. I think, for example, we have performance indicators, performance monitoring. Who determines what the indicators are that we're going to be monitoring? I'm aware that some of the previous scrutiny committees in past years have been almost death by data, and it's been impossible to follow any kind of progress unless you've got a degree from a university. I'm just keen that we have, a small number of indicators that we can easily follow and that the public can easily follow, and that we can determine whether we are making a difference to the borough's housing market or not. So I'd like to know from the Director really who determines what the indicators are. And then as a last point really, Chair, this is an issue I've raised with yourself and also the Chair of the Children's Services Committee. The government this week issued revised guidance for how we look after the housing needs of care leavers. So I think maybe we need to look at that as a further item on the work programme, again, sooner rather than later.
Thank you, Ian. Yeah, if I can just take that last one, the guidance for councillors to help ensure care leavers have stable homes that they need, then yes, that definitely needs to be on the work programme, and it could actually be a joint work programme with ourselves and children. So no, thank you for that. Allan, I'm going to ask you to address the first question.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So, Councillor Lewis, so we will we obviously have got some of the data we used previously. So the proposal is that I come back via a workshop of the committee to look at the dashboard, which we bring back to make that meaningful for members. So it does give that overview and assurance of what's happening within the housing market as well. So again, that will be for the committee to shape as part of the reporting mechanisms coming back. So it won't be officers proposing that and an enforced dashboard, if you like. It will be done with members over the course of the next few weeks, so we can bring that back as a standing item.
Good. Thank you, Allan. Does that answer your question, Councillor Lewis?
Yes, it does. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Robinson, Jean, I can see you have your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. I'd also like to suggest that we also put on the programme homelessness. Obviously, there's been some great work done, obviously during COVID by the local authority, but there's also challenges to come, obviously now and in the future, and obviously what sort of forward plan we're going to do, anticipating the fact is, sadly, people do lose their properties due to being obviously furloughed, losing their jobs, or they've come up this sort of period of when they didn't have to sort of pay rent, etc. So I think that's probably an important one that we need to have as well, please, on the programme.
I agree. I think that's one of the first things we need to pick up on. Thank you, Jean. I've just seen as well, Councillor Bird has put in that perhaps, and I know we've discussed this, Jo, that might not be an immediate as homelessness is, but we do need to have an item on the future work programme regarding travellers, gypsies and Roma and their right to housing, while still being sensitive to local needs. So if we can make sure that that's picked up, please, out of the chat box, and we put that on the work programme. Jean, did you have anything else, or have you still got your hand up?
No apologies, Julie.
Okay, it's all right. Don't apologise. I can see Lisa Newman. Lisa, would you like to come in, please?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just want to raise that members might want to consider that there's two particular work areas that would potentially need to be discussed and discussed at this committee. One, as you'll be aware, is we're going out for consultation on the Property Pool Plus policy and allocations, and obviously to feed back the results of that consultation exercise to this committee, so that they're aware of the full views that have been received from members of the public before any final policy is taken forward. And the other one is around us doing some, we have a financial assistance policy that we use for housing services and grants and financial assistance that we give out as an authority, and there are some particular changes that I think we need to take forward and have formally in that policy with regards to how we respond to end-of-life care for disabled facilities grants, and that would be something else that I would be proposing, and I think perhaps members of this committee might want to consider and look at.
Thank you. That's absolutely imperative that we have that on there. That would include then working with adults, perhaps with adaptations.
Yeah, it's the whole disabled facilities grant, but it's covered under the housing services, but we link in with the NHS and social care around those and children's services. Yeah.
Okay, lovely. Thank you for that, Lisa. There are a couple of issues that I've noted down myself, and some have been mentioned already, homelessness being one of them. One is perhaps a link to what you've just said, Lisa, and what I want to do is have a look at the what sort of support that we've got out for our elderly population, given that we're all getting older, and I want to ensure that what we're providing is what people want, and that we have them perhaps in each constituency area. And that so the people are near family and friends, and place is so very, very important. So I'd like something to be on the agenda for that. And the other thing is something that I think is probably close to all our hearts is HMOs. And some of the places that we expect some of our residents to live in, I wouldn't want to live in them. I wouldn't want a member of my family or friends living in them. So I really do think we need to have a look at that. I can see that there's a conversation as well on the chat between Councillor Bird and Lewis, and we're talking about perhaps problems with some landlords. Now, I know one of those, Joe, we've talked about, Councillor Bird, we talk about the private sector rented area, and I think there are, as you've said yourself, some awful experiences, and I hear about some terrible experiences that people have to put up with, that I don't think they should have to put up with. And I know there's the selective licensing area, and I think that could be a whole area that we perhaps need to have a look at again, so I think that would be useful. I'm hoping that's what you mean in Joe, but I can actually see here that Councillor Lewis has also come back in, and it's really not just about private rented homes, and we do have some issues from our registered social landlords. So I do need to think that whole area needs looking at. I'd actually be keen as well to see housing forums set up again with our registered social landlords. I think something was set up in the past and isn't in operation now, but I'm very keen to get that set back up again. So I suppose that's just a starter for 10 from us all, isn't it? Does anybody else have anything that they want to add to that? Okay, I can see Councillor Brame has put in there about the empty properties. Can everybody hear me? Yes. I didn't know if I was just chatting on there and I was chatting to myself. But yeah, and I think that's another one, Alan, that definitely has to be on the agenda there. So I certainly do think that's we've got some good pieces of work there to look at. Okay. Sorry?
Plenty to keep us busy, I think.
Plenty to keep us busy, I think. Yeah, keep us out of trouble. Okay. Is there anything else? Sorry.
Sure. Stuart.
Oh, hello, Stuart. Hi.
Yeah, I know mention's been made of social landlords, but I think it's worth remembering that the housing stock operated by social landlords should have all been brought up to decent home standards.
Yes.
I think in terms of the sheer number of private landlords we have in Wirral, if we look at housing standards and potentially environmental impact and stuff. I think we need to sharpen our focus and not cast our net too wide.
Okay. I think there are areas though, Stuart, that even within the social landlords, and we need to be looking at the type of homes that we're providing, and we should make sure that we're meeting our our climate objections, and that homes, that we have good standards of homes for people to live in, something that we would want to live in ourselves. Councillor Lewis, have you got your hand up there?
Yeah, just to respond quickly to that point, Chair, I'm not sure the people on the housing waiting list are particularly bothered, really, whether it's a registered social landlord or a private landlord. They just want to be able to have the option of living somewhere that is appropriate to their needs. So I think it would be wrong at this stage to exclude any particular type of housing from any review that we do.
Okay, thank you. Okay, that's quite a lot, I think, as I said, to be going on with. Can I ask that members note the proposals for the work programme for the remainder of the 2021 municipal year? And can we do that by assent? Okay, yeah, thank you. Agreed, lovely, thank you. Okay, I think that concludes this part of the evening's meeting, and can I just take the opportunity to thank everybody for attending. I'm sure it won't be this quick next